And a federal judge slapping down President Obama in a feature of his signature ObamaCare. Just a short time ago, the federal judge ruling that President Obama never got House approval to pay $175 billion to subsidize insurance companies and thus has no business doing so. While not a death blow to Obamacare, millions of low-income Americans may now have to pay more for coverage. Georgetown law professor Randy Barnett, who was one of the lawyers who worked on the case in the United States Supreme Court unsuccessfully challenging Obamacare on a different issue, is here to go on the record. Good evening, sir.
Good to see you, Greta.
Okay, so first of all, how did Congress get into court? Because we always hear that Congress can't go into court.
Well, one of the things that makes this case different is it's the House as a whole that went into court, not just individual members. Usually they turn away individual members, but the House as a whole, they said, had an interest in this outcome, in basically in whether the protection of the power of the purse.
So is it the situation that they hadn't authorized the money, but President Obama said, I don't care anyway, essentially? I'm being crass about it. I don't care. I'm going to authorize the payments anyway to these insurance companies to subsidize them. Is that what happened? And the judge just said, no, you can't do that. It's unconstitutional?
Exactly. I mean, the statute covers two different things. One is payments to consumers in the form of credits, and the other is payments to insurers. Well, the statute did include annual recurring payments for the credits. It did not include perpetual or ongoing payments to the insurance companies. That was supposed to be done through an annual appropriation, and the Obama administration, after first asking for an appropriation, then when they didn't get it, they just started allocating the money that was coming in from other sources to this, even though that was not part of the statute.
Is this a big deal or not?
Well, it's a big deal from a constitutional standpoint because it has to do with whether Congress can actually exercise its power of the purse. Because if you listen to the administration's position, the only way that Congress can contest what the president did is by denying the president funding. That would require a resolution of a law in the House, a law in the Senate, and the president could still veto that. So the only way that Congress could look after itself is by having a supermajority of Congress. And so this means that the president can't spend money when the Congress doesn't say something. The president can't make up something and spend the money anyway.
Does this clip the president's wings, so to speak? I mean, are there other instances where the president is trying to do this, in other cases spending money that's not allocated by Congress?
Not that I know of. I mean, this president has pushed the envelope in a whole number of areas. Even the individual insurance mandate, Greta, was something Congress had never tried to do before. That was something that Congress did. And so this is not something that is widespread, but if it were allowed to be done, and if the courts of appeals do allow it to be done, we can imagine that it is something that will become widespread in the future.
All right, so the judge ruled against Obamacare on this provision in the statute. But the judge has stayed the decision, meaning that she didn't issue the injunction giving the government, President Obama, an option to go to the United States Court of Appeals, right? So that's where it's going to be pending?
Well, I would say the judge ruled in favor of Obamacare, in favor of the actual wording of the Affordable Care Act. That's what the judge enforced, and now what the act says is Congress shall appropriate that money every year, and if Congress doesn't, it doesn't get funded. That's what the power of the purse is. So now the president needs to get Congress to pay for this.
But the judge's decision is on hold, at least for the short time, while giving the Obama administration time to appeal.
Exactly. The judge issued an injunction, but then stayed the injunction until pending appeal. And so at this point, nothing is going to change.
Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see what happens with this. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure, Greta.